fire that up. Thanks again for taking the time. We do really appreciate it.
Of course, happy to be here.
Thankfully, out of your slow day today.
Yeah.
We have a real life hero here today. We got Ed. It's true. Don't shake your head at me like that. He absolutely is. He enlisted in the army. I mean, literally the next day after 9/11, and he was an embalmer. Just got licensed right before it happened, and went into the army. Was in Mortuary Affairs. An unbelievable, super cool story, and he's been in funeral service for 27 years. He's got a ton of experience, fun, crazy stories. Ed, we want to know how that came to be at the very beginning, because what a transformational time at such a young age that you were going through. Walk us through that whole process when you were first getting started in funeral service.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of
Appreciate
course.
you having me on
Yeah.
here. Yeah, so I was a junior in high school, writing a English paper, and it was a subject. It was a semester-long research project. It could be on any subject that we wanted, and I guess for a lot of reasons, but no reason at the same time, I chose what happens to us after we die.
Okay.
That was going to be my thesis statement, and so it involved interviewing funeral directors and reading the books and trade journals and things like that, and just kind of taking the deep dive into
Yeah.
something I knew nothing about. Just so happened that a classmate of mine had a dad who was one of the funeral directors at one of the local funeral homes.
Okay. Nice.
She hooked me up with him, and I went in and interviewed him, and he gave me a tour of the place. And I just thought, wow, this is a really, really cool job. And
You're a
towards the
unique
end of that,
person for thinking that. I'll tell you that much.
oh wow, yeah, it's just so unique, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
If nothing else, it's
so
definitely that.
yeah, and they towards the end of that semester, I found out that they were looking for a another. They called it night staff or night person.
Sure.
Basically to come in at 4 or 5 o'clock, keep the funeral home open during visitation,
Yep.
close it down, be on call at night every other weekend,
The
things
fun
like
job.
that. Yeah, yeah, I figured I could do that,
Yeah.
and so I did.
Wow. That's
And,
that's a good start to it. And then so you went to mortuary school. You were literally in high school. So how did that even work? How did that transition in the first place? That's one of the most young licensed funeral directors I think we've ever had. You might be the youngest, honestly.
well, I got licensed at 21, so when I
Okay.
graduated high school, I figured, the next it was just a natural transition to go right into mortuary school,
Yeah.
which at the time, San Francisco had a program, and so I went through there. Had to move to San Francisco, and um, to me that was just it was amazing because one of the guys that I was one of my early mentors when I first got the job at the local funeral home
Hmm.
was licensed in the 1940s. So
Wow.
rusty Navy World War II vet. You
Nice.
know, the day I brought my application into the funeral home, I tried handing it to him. Can you please give this to your manager? And he just looked at me. He goes, "You want to work here?" I said, "Yes." And then he took 3 steps backwards. This is the most dramatic thing this man's ever done. He took 3 steps backward and put his hands out like this and said, 50 years, this is what happens to you. He
What
goes,
did he
What
mean by
makes
that?
you want to work here?" Well, I'm 17 years old. I have no idea what to think about that. And I was like, can you just give him the application? He goes, I'm not going to take that from you until I give you a tour of this place. I said, well, I've had a tour. That was part of my research
Yeah.
project. He goes, you haven't seen anything. Follow me. And we bypassed all of the offices, all the arrangement, all the parlors, the
Yeah.
chapel, went straight into the embalming room where
Yeah.
someone was just being brought in from a removal
Nice and
and
fresh.
put on the table. And there's people in different states of prep. And
Yeah.
he goes, I'll take your application now.
Yeah, that's the way. You got to get tossed right in. There's no other way to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, he was one of my early mentors, and he had been well, everybody went to San Francisco in that area.
Yeah.
The school had been in operation since the 30s.
Wow. Yeah. Long one.
So you hear all the lore about the San Francisco College of Mortuary Science
Yeah.
and the experiences they've all had, and
Sure.
just felt like the rite of passage to go enroll and be part of that program.
It's cool that every little community or every little city, there's always the local mortuary school, and like 80% of the people go to that specific one, and it's that
Hmm.
connection you share with everyone. You got the stories, and you ask about the professor that's been there for 45 years or whatever it is, and they're still around. It's the same deal here, and I love hearing about that stuff.
Yeah, with the professor that you're referring to, and for our school was his name was Mac.
Okay.
He was a student and teacher at the same time back in the 1950s.
It's like being
And
on an NBA roster and being Phil Jackson at the same time.
but what was cool about it was everybody who had ever been to that school that was still alive had Mac stories. Because not only had he been there forever, he was a character too. So everybody loved him.
Yeah,
He had all these great stories about how he lost his finger, and every day the story about how he lost his finger was
it's
different.
different.
It was always meant to teach you some sort of lesson. And
How can he be such a skilled embalmer with a missing finger? It's going to prohibit you in some way.
I don't know that I ever saw him embalm because when we were in the lab, if we had a problem, he said, "I don't know, you're the embalmer."
Classic defer. I've never actually done this. I just know how to talk about
Oh,
it.
he had done it, but no one's ever witnessed it.
Oh, that's great. What a funny story. I remember some kids in my class or guys in my class joking around about one of our professors or something that was maybe a little bit less experienced or something. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna raise the vein and inject the vein and like call it the artery or something." I was like, "What are you like talking about? Like that's first of all not an easy thing to do, especially if you're a student. Second of all, like the professor's gonna know, like they have some awareness, and it ended up like they nicked the vein. There was blood everywhere, and it was like just looked like an absolute fool, like trying to like play a prank on the teacher. Just you gotta love the mortuary school stories.
Didn't work out well for him, huh?
Sure didn't. Okay, what happened after that then? So, is that did you start actually working, or was it pretty quick turnaround when 9/11 happened and the rest of the career got kicked off?
Oh yeah, I graduated from mortuary school in '99.
Okay.
Did my apprenticeship in California. It's 2 years. I did that apprenticeship at a very high volume funeral home, so
Yeah.
embalming only.
Yep.
Um, got my
That'll give you
license in
experience
April
right there.
2001. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
ton of experience. Yeah, April 2001 licensed, and then I was actually on my way to go to special effects mortuary or special effects makeup school in Pennsylvania.
Whoa.
Um, I was supposed to start, the fall semester,
Yeah.
and I'd already given up my apartment, already, tied up all those loose ends to go to school, and uh, 9/11 happened, and military wasn't even really on my radar at that point.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just something changed in me, and my
That calling.
perspective changed, and
Yeah.
my first reaction wasn't to join the army. My first reaction was to go to New York as an embalmer
Yeah, for support,
and
right.
help. I don't know what they need, but that went nowhere. My next thought was National Guard. That went nowhere.
Hmm.
Couldn't find a number for the National Guard. Ended up calling the actual Army and sat down with a recruiter, and yeah, and in the Army you get to pick your job. There's over 200 ways, to serve with,
Sure.
MOS. Um, it was such a fly-by-night decision that I saw Mortuary Affairs, and I was like, well, I guess that fits,
Yeah.
you know. So enlisted as a Mortuary Affairs specialist.
Unbelievable. Well. First off, thank you for your service. We do appreciate it, and what a cool thing to say. At the time when our country is in such a crisis, to step up to the plate, like that's so admirable and wonderful thing to see. That's pretty amazing. I'd love to know about what your career looked like then as a in mortuary affairs, and what did you do? Did you go, were you over in Afghanistan or anything like that? And how did your career go in mortuary affairs for the Army?
Sure. Surprisingly, when I got to what they call permanent party, where you're done with all your training, you get assigned your unit.
Yeah.
I was out of Fort Lee, Virginia, with the only active duty mortuary affairs company in the Army, 54th
Oh,
Quartermaster Company. Um, and there is no peacetime mission for the 54th Quartermaster.
okay.
So there's nothing to do when you're at Fort Lee except get in trouble and do chores, basically.
Okay.
You're picking up cigarette butts and raking dirt.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what you do all day. Um, and there was a platoon getting ready to deploy to the Middle East right when I got there, and I was like, "Can I please
Get
go
on.
with
Yeah.
them? Like, I want to go. That's the whole point."
Right.
I said no for whatever reason. I was denied that, and I was just such a pain in the ass the rest of the time that when it came time to send another platoon to Afghanistan, they put me in it. Um,
Well,
so
there
I
you
got to
go.
go to Afghanistan for 7 months.
Wow.
While I was in Afghanistan, the rest of the army invaded Iraq.
Yeah.
So I came home from Afghanistan. 6 months later, I was in Iraq. I was there for a year.
Wow.
And then I decided to re-enlist, but I didn't want to continue with mortuary affairs
Oh.
because by that time I wanted something different or more, whatever it was, and so
Yeah.
they call it reclassing, to be retrained and reassigned. So I chose infantry with the
Okay.
2nd Airborne Division.
Wow.
So got to learn how to jump out of planes and got
What
assigned
a
to a
combo you had. That I,
yeah,
has that
it
ever
was
been done? Is what I want to know. Has anyone ever done what you've done?
it's gone the other way. There have been guys in the 82nd, infantry that enlisted without knowing any better, and then decided to hell with this and went to mortuary affairs. I don't
Wise.
know that anybody's ever gone in the
Flip
back
the
door
other
like
way.
that.
Right. Okay, so what was it like being over there, just in general speaking, and then actually for your position? What was that like? As much as you want to talk about it, we don't have to go too deep if you don't want, but whatever you feel like sharing.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. Afghanistan was a trip
Hmm.
because it's kind of the foothills of the Himalayas, so you're really high elevation. It's hard to breathe when you first get there.
Yeah.
Um, it was cold, snowy, during the winter months.
Right.
We were separate from everybody else. The mortuary team, there was a team of 6 of us,
Okay.
and our position was basically on the flight line at the very end of the runway, because we were
Oh.
Bagram Air Base, and because mortuary affairs, our main task is to receive and evacuate
Right.
um,
Right.
people who have passed. So we're right on the flight line, and we weren't in what they call tent city where everybody else was living. So
Yeah.
we were on our own little secluded camp.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we all got along, and we loved being out there. We could do whatever we wanted.
Right.
Afghanistan was a thankfully slow from the point of intake.
That's
I
good.
think we took care of 20 U.S. soldiers, and then about 20 or 25 other, usually local nationals,
Sure.
Afghanis,
Sure.
that die in our care or custody.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a pretty boring 7 months, really,
Uh-huh.
but interesting from the standpoint of you're in a combat zone, and
Yeah.
that's just a brand new thing to you.
Right.
Um,
And it's so different because these losses are, something someone's giving their life for their country. So it's such a special sort of thing, and you have to have that extra level of reverence. And it's one of your people, one of your brothers or sisters that has died. It's got to be such a hard thing to see that come through. How did you handle that?
I don't know that we did handle it.
Yeah,
We just did.
you just did it.
We
Yeah,
just did it.
yeah,
It you figure out how to deal with that afterwards.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
that
I'm with you.
and I'm not ashamed to say that I, came out of there with undiagnosed and certainly unrecognized PTSD. I
Sure.
didn't know what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
Had I known then what I know today, I would have known
Understood what
you
was
you
going on a little
you,
bit.
you need help.
Yeah.
You need to process that.
Jeez.
I'm all better now.
Good,
Um,
good.
but no, it was it's surreal, when you
Yeah.
see somebody the same age as you, the same uniform, doing, not necessarily the same thing in combat, but you're all there for the same
Same
reason,
purpose. Yeah.
and this is what can happen. This is the reality of it. And
That's
some of it was
scary.
accidents, some of it was combat, some of it was suicide. Um,
Man.
so you're seeing nothing but trauma.
Yeah.
There's no natural death in combat.
No. No.
So
That's tough. That is tough.
and I don't smile to make light of it. I smile because it's something that I'm so proud that I was able to do.
No
Um,
doubt.
I was able to, or as a team, we were able to uh, take care of these guys in country
Yeah.
and get them on the first leg of the journey home.
Right, because you're trying to probably go as fast as humanly possible to get them through the process and get them on the next flight, like get them out. How is that? I'd like to ask, what is the embalming process like compared to what you would see in a normal funeral home? So what's the biggest difference you're seeing?
There's no embalming overseas.
Okay.
We do not embalm in a combat zone anymore.
Okay.
That was, I think that went away with Vietnam.
Yeah.
Our job was to receive the individuals, verify their identification, make sure that they had dog tags or ID card,
Sure.
get a member of their unit to sign an affidavit saying they know that to be them. So identification was extremely important.
That's hard.
Um,
Yeah.
Safeguard their personal effects,
Yeah.
return weapons and sensitive materials and ordnance back to the unit,
Mm-hmm.
and then work with the Air Force to find out the next plane that they can get on.
Yeah, geez, that's tough. That's not an easy job, and you have to be meticulous about that, I'm sure.
Right. Well, and part of what we did too was we had to catalog or anatomically chart all of their scars, tattoos, and
And
wounds.
wounds, yeah,
And when you get the ones where most of the diagram of the body is just blacked out,
yeah.
because so much was not recovered.
Gosh,
Yeah,
not
they were
easy,
tough cases. They were
not
tough
easy.
to deal with, but we looked at it from a standpoint of this is an honor and a privilege to be
Yeah,
in this position.
yeah, yeah,
Other units, even the ones we answered to, gave us that distance. They let us not fall in line with the rest of their the units in their charge.
right. It makes
So we,
sense,
we were
and
able to kind of decompress on our own time and just be amongst our own team.
yeah, because you're doing some of the worst, having to go through that, and you know, witness the things with your own two eyes, and it just, having to know what you're there for, and the whole thing in general is just that's such a challenge and not an easy thing for the strongest of people to go through. So it's I can only imagine that would weigh on you for a bit, but it seemed like you were there and you had the right mindset that you were there to do the job, to serve as best as you can for not only for them but their families and everything else. It's quite a crazy thing that you've had to go through.
Well, and it's an all volunteer army, so it's literally what you asked to do.
Yeah,
You literally volunteered to be there, and yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm glad I was able to be there, and I'm glad that I had even though it wasn't required, I'm glad that I had a mortuary science background.
yeah,
It helped in a lot of ways,
I'm sure.
because we're in mortuary affairs training for the army. You're not taught a lot of things in general. You're given kind of a broad scope, and then it's on the job training from there.
Right, right. It's just
So,
like
so
being a
having a little bit
mortician.
more background. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
How was it in Iraq then? What was the biggest difference between the two then?
There was a lot more going on in Iraq.
Okay.
We were at BIOP, which is the Baghdad International Airport.
Hmm.
Um, that's where we evacuated from. Um, we had a tent at the end of the flight line, and we were just out there by ourselves. There was just a lot more going on. We
Yeah.
probably processed between U.S. servicemen, third country nationals, local nationals, other coalition forces, probably around 500 or 600 decedents
And that was in a
in the
year.
one
Yeah,
year.
that's a ton. Golly. And it was the same sort of process then, same way about going out. What was there anything different besides the level of volume?
Um, One of the challenges we had in Iraq, as far as evacuating and receiving U.S. servicemen, women, that was pretty much the same. You work with the Air Force and you get them out as soon as possible.
Right.
The main challenge we had was I was there when Iraq was given their sovereignty back in
Mm,
2004
okay.
as a nation. And so their medical examiner was starting to stand up as an entity, a government
Oh,
entity in Baghdad.
yeah.
And so we had to work with the medical examiner and the ICRC, Red Crescent, um, to try and repatriate the local nationals that we had in our custody who were in a 40-foot deep freeze. Um,
What?
we would receive them, we'd take pictures of their faces, and we had this big binder, and we'd go into the green zone, the coalition forces green zone,
Uh-huh.
and link up with different uh, the Red Crescent or the medical examiner, and uh, we'd sit down with families, and they'd flip through the binder and identify somebody, and then we had to plan a link up in order to give the medical examiner a whole bunch of bodies, or just link up with the family to deliver one.
Right.
Logistically, that took all of our time.
Yeah, it's a ton of logistics there. I mean, and you have
Yeah,
a ton coming in. You have multiple a day pretty much.
yeah, and a lot more coalition forces. We were dealing with a lot of embassies from other nations, all who handled
A different
uh,
challenge itself, I'm sure.
KIAs a lot differently, and
Yeah.
but everything, we rolled with the punches. We learned to be flexible. We had to stand our ground, and do things the way that we had to do them.
Yeah.
But so that was the main difference. Iraq was just a lot more complicated from those aspects.
Yeah. Well, it made you who you are, and you were able to move on from there. I'm sure to a whole different side of funeral service. What happened after that? So when you were done serving, did you go back to San Francisco and work out there? What was the beginning of your next form or next part of your career like?
Well, yeah, so I was in the airborne infantry for the next 4 years, and
Right.
then did two more deployments there and responded to Katrina with them.
Okay. Nice.
So, then spent a year with the California National Guard, which we can forget about that.
Yeah.
Um, I went back to San Francisco and took my old job basically. So where I'd served my apprenticeship, went right back to a high volume
Was that old
funeral.
timer still there, waiting and shaking?
Oh, he was back in my hometown. That
Oh,
guy,
okay.
he was
Okay.
still alive. He was yeah, he died a couple years after I came home.
Ah,
Um, but yeah, a lot of the faces at the funeral home in San Francisco that I worked for had changed. I had changed.
yeah.
It was hard transitioning back
I
and
can only
becoming part of
imagine.
that team again.
Right.
I demanded higher standards than people were used to, and held myself to them too.
That's
So
good. Yeah.
I think I became a better embalmer. But at that point, I had never really worked with families, and I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
A
and
whole different side. Yeah.
funny story, when well, I don't know if it's funny, but right when I got back, within about 6 months, working in the prep room, uh, receptionist came over the intercom and said, "Hey, Ed, the Army's on the phone." What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean the Army is on the phone?
Like who? What? Is it for service?
And so it was somebody looking for a funeral home for a soldier that was killed in Iraq.
Oh.
Um, and so I took the first call info basically, and kind of had to sell the funeral home a little bit. I said, hey, look, you're probably going to call around, get the best prices, whatever you got to do, but from an infrastructure standpoint, we're the largest funeral home here. We have the people, we have the vehicles, we have the facility. Like we can handle this.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting that call, and
Wow.
we were busy at the time, and so the manager said, "You're going to be the lead funeral director for that." My first family ever.
Wow, that's full circle
And
right
that's the
there.
one.
That's really cool. Wow.
Thrown into the deep end.
Yeah. And it was
It's
probably
I don't know if you
massive and
ever
nuts.
I don't know if you ever had to deal with that at KIA from Iraq
No,
or Afghanistan,
I
but
have
it is
not.
just it is a lot of planning and a lot of communication,
Give us a little bit of a
and a lot of
rundown.
that communication is one way. What's that?
You give us a little bit of a rundown of it. How does the whole process work, and then what happens when he came back and everything? I'm very curious. That's a whole different type of loss, and obviously unembalmed too. So what happens?
So they are embalmed in Dover, Delaware. When they get stateside, they're embalmed by DoD contractors at the Port Mortuary in Dover.
Got it. Okay.
Um, but before you even receive anybody, you have to coordinate with the casualty affairs officers that are assigned to the family.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, there was a divorce in the family.
Yeah.
So there was two parents that were split,
Yeah.
and then there was the wife. And
Tense.
so I'm dealing with three different casualty affairs officers, all with their own interests representing who they
Oh,
represent. Um, and
talk
then we're
about a
trying to
nightmare
figure out,
first family. Yeah.
yeah, and then we're trying to figure out, where is he, the decedent, in
Mm-hmm.
this process? Um, when is he coming in? And what they wanted us to do, and I don't know if this is still a thing, but they wanted us to schedule the service before they would schedule his arrival.
That's not gonna fly.
I, well, I was in charge, but I wasn't in charge.
Right.
There's only certain things I have
You were
control over.
secondary.
Like, let me get the body, and then we'll go from there. It doesn't
Right.
work that way. So we had to schedule a service, and then they coordinated when he was going to arrive. And of course, every part of the movement of the body has to be done to military protocol. There has to be
Okay.
military pallbearers, um, and anytime you travel up and down the road with him, you have to notify California Highway Patrol, state police, wherever you're at, um,
Really?
the local county sheriff, the police jurisdictions that you're going to be driving through. You have to make sure that dignitaries in your city are notified, because they're going to want to be involved. You have to
Wow.
find out what top brass from the military is going to be there, because we had some general that was going to present the flag, come down
That's
from
cool.
Fort in Washington. Um, so it's just a massive amount of coordination. Then you got all the other groups like the Gold Star Mothers. They wanted to come and make a presentation at graveside, and I didn't know that until the morning of. They figured they would just show up and do it.
Curveball.
Well, it was a lot of curveballs,
I can only imagine. Yeah.
but we made it happen. Gave them a good send off, and
That's great.
that family was ice cold towards me at the beginning,
I'm
and
sure.
it was hugs and exchange of personal cell phone numbers at the end. So
There's nothing better than that. That's one of the best feelings in the world when you have tough family start They want nothing to do with you. They want to take their anger out on someone. It's the funeral director who gets the blunt of it. But then you get them to switch that flop. Woo, that's sweet
Yeah,
right there.
it's a nice feeling, and when everything just goes smoothly and everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do, yeah, it was good.
And for your first family that you really ever helped on that level, talk about getting the experience right off, starting with a bang.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why he thought that was a good idea, my manager at the time, but I guess he thought I could handle it, and I think um, I let go a lot of my prep duties during that time because
I'm
I was
sure.
certainly busy.
Yeah.
You know, for someone who doesn't have a desk, to have to do that level of service planning was just it was eye opening.
You got the embalming table as a desk if you need. You would have been fine.
There's always somebody on it. We were too busy for all that.
That's what I always say that the prep room's my office. So don't come on
Yeah,
in without knocking.
that's right.
Cool. And then, all right, so now you have a full career in between then. Now you're in northern Michigan and you run your own trade service. What was the path to get there?
We left my wife and I left San Francisco. She's from Michigan, so we decided that
Got it.
we'd go to Michigan. In order to ensure a job, took a I was looking at job openings for SCI
Hmm.
and ended up working at one of their locations here in Traverse City.
Nice.
Um, they sold out to another not another corporation, but a family here that owns probably 12 or so locations, and they wanted in this market, and so I worked there for about 2 years before they sold to them.
Okay.
SCI sold to this other place, and then
Yeah.
didn't work out.
Hmm.
So I knew at the time that the medical examiner here was looking for transportation options because theirs fell through like completely.
Yeah. Saw a need. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I knew there was no trade service here at all, no
Really?
transport company, no trade and bond. When we were
That's wild.
when I was working as a funeral director for SCI here, there was no one to call. It was all in house. It all had to be done in house.
That's weird,
Um,
especially when you come from a big city like San Francisco, and I'm sure there's tons of trade, and you're just used to
oh yeah,
if I have to outsource, I outsource, and then you go to a smaller area and they don't have it. It's like, how do you even function?
yeah. Like, what do you mean? There's no trade company? There's no transportation company, no trade embalmers. Yeah, it was weird. But I also saw that as an opportunity, and I'd gotten a business degree while I was still in San Francisco, so I
Nice.
kind of had that mindset that I wanted to do something on my own at some
Yeah, that
point,
itch. Yeah.
and so that was the point. We went ahead and started the company and got the medical examiner transportation contract.
Nice.
I didn't know any funeral directors in the area aside from the ones I worked with, and so
That's
it
tough.
was
It's all about the connection too in trade service. Man,
all
that's tough.
all cold calling and walking in and introducing myself and uh, but
How'd you do it then? Well, what was it like? You're like, I promise you, I'm a good embalmer, or like, what'd you
yeah.
do to get what'd you do to get business?
um I didn't do anything special other than just make myself available and make sure that they knew that not only am I a trade embalmer, I'm a company. I'm licensed. I got my own liability insurance.
Yep.
I have recommendations from people that I did work with.
Hmm.
Um, and the trade embalming, I thought it was going to be a transportation company with a little bit of trade embalming sprinkled in, but it's really turned out to be a lot more embalming than I bargained for.
Really? Why do you think that is?
I think that there's a lot of owners that either don't want to do it anymore, or don't have time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're short staffed. They don't have a lot of licensed people. The
Hmm.
licensed people that they do have are inexperienced.
Okay.
Um, So there's some places that only call me for the tough ones,
Oh man, that's
but
got to
but
be the
mostly
worst part about trade embalming is that a lot of times like funeral directors like I'm not touching that one.
there's no bigger honor than a funeral home feeling overwhelmed with the body in front of them and knowing that they can call you.
That is, yeah, that's an
And so
honor.
I take that for that's how I look at it anyway. I don't know. Maybe they are dumping on me.
Yeah, I'd be like, yeah, I'm a little bit scared of that one. I might as well call Ed.
Yeah, like I cannot be available if I want to be.
Right, exactly. Have you had any crazy cases? Like what are some of the most maybe unique ones that you've come across over your years?
um, if you know, I don't really feel that any case is unique anymore. I feel like these days you're getting the gamut of everything.
Okay.
A straight case is unique,
Yeah.
or a one point injection is unique.
That's a good
Um,
point. Yeah.
Everybody has jaundice. Everybody has edema.
Yeah.
People have tissue gas.
Yeah.
I had a body that was going to be a straight case the other a couple weeks ago or months ago. I lose track of time. Um, he was a head trauma,
Okay.
and so they did a cranial autopsy, and I thought, okay, so we're going to do just a regular embalming and then cranial treatment.
Yeah.
Well, his skull was shattered into many pieces,
Oh no.
and so it became a reconstruction on top of it.
You get the glue
Um,
gun out.
well, I had a employee of mine that wanted to, shadow, and so I just told him, "Hey, I'm going to get started on the injection. Run back to the house, get the block of wood that's sitting there on the shelf next to the Dremel. Grab the Dremel, grab some
Yeah.
plaster bandages."
Sure.
Um, and as I'm drilling holes and gluing and tie wiring pieces of skull together, it dawned on me that I really have kind of come full circle in embalming,
Sure.
because to me that was just it's just what we had to do today. There
Yeah.
was there was really no thought about how to handle it. You just go right into
This
doing
is
it.
what I gotta do. It's
Yeah,
right in front of you. You got the experience. It's like, all right, it's go time. There's no
yep,
need to hesitate on it. Yeah, that's cool.
yeah.
And then what about so how is business going now? Do you got some staff alongside you to help out and what is that looking like? And what I guess what because Traverse City is a medium size, like it's a pretty good sized town. How far out do you go, and what does that look like for your business too?
So we handle the medical examiner contract for two counties because
Okay.
it's a joint medical examiner. Um, and so we constantly have to have somebody, a person and equipment ready to go at any time.
Yeah.
Have to be on scene within being called within 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's become quite a challenge, to
I'm
make sure that
sure.
somebody's always available.
Yeah, that's always the
Um,
hardest part. Yeah.
we do the autopsies 3 hours away. So, you know, when you have somebody on call, but they have to go to Kalamazoo, now you have to backfill the local person, um,
Man,
and
are you able
the other
to
transportations.
that's so far. Are you able to double up, like know that you have a couple cases coming, or well, what happens in that situation? Because that's almost a full day of work right there, just going to and from.
I've never really been given a standard of how quickly we have to get down there with them.
Okay.
So I set my own standard.
Yeah.
If a call comes in after a certain time of night, I'm not going to put a driver on the road at 3 o'clock the next
No.
morning. There's just not enough time for that person to prepare and get enough sleep and safely make the drive.
Right. It's
I'm
the
sure they could, but
safety at
just
that
from
point.
my own
Right.
standpoint, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be that boss that considers safety first.
Yeah. And maybe
So
they'll
we'll
like
push
you a
it off
little along the
24 hours.
way.
We'll push it off 24 hours, but that's as far as I want to push it out.
Sure, sure. Wow, that's pretty intense. I mean, you've had to seen a lot of different things. Do you have any good stories about removals or transfers or any families or something? I mean, you've been doing this for what would 27? Did you say 27 years? Is that right?
It
Give
was.
us some of your best. Unload it on us.
Well, the best removals are decomps in bad spots. You know,
Best. Mm.
yeah, that's when you're doing your job now.
Yeah, you're earning. You're earning.
You know, those house calls, people say, "Well, I could do that job," but when you go out to the homeless encampment where somebody's been sitting there for a couple weeks out in the middle of the woods,
Ooh,
which is a real story that happened last summer.
tell us
I
it.
call last summer the summer of the decomp.
Really? Was
Just
it rough?
every
Yeah.
medical examiner call was so bad, so bad.
Oh, tell us about the woods
Um,
one. What happened?
they think it was a homicide, um,
Really?
but he had been there for probably 2 weeks in the middle of summer.
Oh my
Um,
God. Mm.
and I don't know if he wasn't found. I don't know how you can miss that smell. I think what happened is because of other activities that go on in that area, nobody reported it.
Oh,
They didn't want
okay.
law enforcement out there.
Yeah. And they're already accustomed to that smell, so they weren't gonna say.
So I get out there and I knew we were in trouble because I was told, okay, well, we're waiting on the fire department to show up with their hazmat suits.
Oh
And
boy.
when I got there, the tent was over here and the whole group of investigators and everybody else was over there. And the medical examiner investigator told me he still needs pictures of the front of the guy because he was laying on his stomach and nobody wants to roll him. They're waiting on the fire department, all that. Um, and so I just walk in there and, yeah, it's bad, but how bad is it really? I
Yeah.
mean, it just is what it is at a certain point.
Right. It's like how much worse is one than the other? Like it's all bad.
Yeah. And I noticed that he was laying on a sleeping bag or something. So I went and grabbed one corner of the sleeping bag and just started walking with it.
Yeah.
And that flipped him over onto his stomach
Okay.
or onto his back. And I told the investigator, he's on his back. You can go take your pictures. Wow, really? So he went and took his pictures. And then I laid the body bag next to him and did the same thing with the sleeping bag, just kept walking with it. And he rolled into it. And I'm like, all right, let's go.
Hey, that's not bad. That's crafty right there.
you know,
How was that? How was that car ride then? After that, that's what I want to know.
you'll have to ask my employee. I sent her
Oh,
straight to Kalamazoo with that one.
that's a rough 3 hour trip right there.
I guess what you're doing tonight.
People probably were driving down the highway. They're getting wafts through the windows.
hmm
Oh, that's too good. Wow, that's great. Well, Ed, this has been so fun. We appreciate you taking the time and thank you again for your service to our country and everything that you're doing to help out your local community. It seems like you got your hands full out there.
I love it. Love every minute of it.
That's great. Well, Ed, we appreciate you again. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you very much.